It's Friday, June 2nd, 2023, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. The Senate has comfortably passed the debt ceiling deal struck by President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, doing so with mostly Democratic votes. Ramsey Touchberry and Harris Alec report the 63-36 vote came only days before the June 5th deadline from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen that the nation would default on its ability to pay its debts. The bill made its way through the upper chamber with votes from Democratic senators and left most Republicans in dissent. Only 17 GOP senators voted for the bill, while 46 of the Senate's 51 Democrats backed the legislation. The bill will raise the nation's debt ceiling through the end of next year, while also capping the growth of federal spending at 1% next year. Lawmakers from both parties pulled the bill across the finish line in the face of loud opposition, and the debate about who got the best of who now begins. Kerry Pickett and Stephen Dinan report House Speaker Kevin McCarthy secured the support of most of his conference, despite vehement opposition from the conservative House Freedom Caucus and isolated threats to carry out a vote of no confidence against him. The White House said President Biden didn't negotiate on the debt limit, but instead was negotiating on a budget framework. The president was generous for praise with McCarthy and thanked the speaker for negotiating in good faith. The speaker's supporters said it was too much to expect McCarthy, with a thin Republican majority in the House, to change decades of overspending. Fort Bragg, the legendary North Carolina Army installation, has been the central gravitational force for many military careers and families. Ben Wolfgang reports the Army garrison, opened in 1918 and named for Confederate General Braxton Bragg, will be renamed Fort Liberty, continuing a Pentagon initiative to remove Confederate names from U.S. military facilities. For one of the world's most populous military installations, the transition doesn't promise to be easy. By population, it's the largest military base in the nation, where more than 53,000 active duty troops are stationed and 14,000 civilians work on site. Local business leaders say they expect the vast majority of companies named in honor of the base to rebrand themselves over the next 18 months. Commanders say the redesignation will have no impact on the day-to-day functioning of the base or the installation's reputation as the backbone of the U.S. Army. Officials insist personnel at the base aren't preoccupied with the politics behind the renaming process. Former President Donald Trump returned to Iowa this week to greet Republican voters in a smaller venue for more personal interaction. Susan Friccio reports Trump addressed about 180 people packed into a restaurant in Clive, Iowa on Thursday. He delivered remarks on his plans for a potential second term and answered some questions from the crowd. Iowa is known for its last-minute political shifts, and its first-in-the-nation caucuses are 8 months away. Trump placed second there in 2016 to Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who won in part because of his intensive retail politicking. And finally, Valerie Richardson looks at the success of male-to-female transgender athletes in scholastic sports. Those competitors made a splash this year in California, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Washington by winning races and capturing roster spots in basketball, track and field, and other sports. California's guidelines for gender identity participation makes clear that students are allowed to compete in a manner that is consistent with their gender identity, irrespective of the gender listed on a student's records. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.